Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I'm Matt Rose here with Jessica Bun Bun, and this is our Yellowstone Season 5, Episode 11 reaction and review. And I would like to start this off with a message for Taylor Sheridan, who I'm sure, in between making 8 different TV shows and having his own brand of vodka and having Frito commercials during the show that make me constantly think that the show is back when it really is not, that is very confusing. I have to tell you, sir, that you are back. I have a very love-hate relationship with you sometimes where you make Lioness that I really, really like, then you do Yellowstone, and then you have 30-minute cowboy montage in the first episode in almost 2 years, and then you do Landman, which I get really excited about, and then you have this teenage daughter storyline that makes me want to throw the show straight out the window so it can boil in the Texas sun, and then you give me this episode, which was awesome, which was lit. Thank you, sir. You have temporarily redeemed yourself.
Yes, Landman can be shot into the sun. That whole daughter storyline. I know this isn't a Landman review, but like, I felt like a creep watching that show. I really wanted to like it. I mean, Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah, I know.
John Hamm.
Yes.
This was like, I was looking forward to the show so much, but no, that can be shot into the sun. I'm out on that. But this episode should have been the premiere. That's where I feel we are. The first episode with all these sweeping cowboy shots, like I get it, and it's part of the show, and I do enjoy that part of the show, but not for like such a long wait for it to come back where we were all like, how did John Dutton die? What happened? It's like, and then you're 3 episodes in, and now you're going to give us how he died and show us what happened and everybody digging into it. This is the start of the show for me. It has started.
This was just, I don't know if fun is the right word, but I just really enjoyed seeing the flashbacks, seeing the montages, seeing what Jamie and Beth and Casey are actually doing in regards to solving all of it. And I get it. You know, we care about people like Colby, Teeter, Jimmy, all these other people that are sort of Yellowstone adjacent. But this is the A story. This is the steak that we have gone to the steakhouse for. And there's only so much you can give us, breadsticks and mashed potatoes, and we're going to be okay with that. We're just going to be like, where's the beef?
Exactly. You can't kill John Dutton and then have us be like catching rattlesnakes and making chili and just stop it. This is the start of the season for me. It had everything that I was waiting for and looking forward to, and like, how did the medical coroner miss this? We're going to get into that. But like, there was so much about this that felt just odd. You know, John Dutton is going to do this to himself. Not in any timeline is he ever doing this to himself. Everybody knows who he is here. So even just a medical coroner, I'm just kind of like, wouldn't they be like, something isn't right here? But we will get into all that. But before we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button and stick with us here at the channel. We are going to continue covering Yellowstone, some of our favorite shows to talk about here at the channel every single week. And by hitting that subscribe button, you make sure that you don't miss any of our videos. And it really helps us here at the channel. So thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed.
Thank you guys so much. And if you do want to support us further, be sure to join our Patreon. We have a link in the description below for that. We are in the process of covering another big time Sunday night hit right now in Dune Prophecy over there. If you love the movies, it's a great show to get into. The first episode had a lot of interesting stuff going on. So be sure to join our Patreon, and thank you so much to everyone who has.
All right, let's get into it. How did John Dutton die? We finally actually got to see what happened. And I wasn't sure if they were ever going to show us this, because obviously they don't have Kevin Costner to be able to show us this. They did an excellent job. I felt like this looked like him. Like whoever was the John Dutton, great casting for that. I know they were just a dead body or whatever, but I mean, it was really well done. They showed us three guys came in, they brought him to the bathroom, everything that was created, put, the pills in the cabinet, all of it, to make it look like he did this to himself. And I'm like, okay, here we go. This all makes sense. It was good to actually just see it happen, and that they didn't just be like, okay, it's off screen because we don't have Kevin.
You know what this felt a lot to me like, and I know this was one of your favorite shows when we covered it. It was Ripley on Netflix, where
so good. Oh my God.
like they had these long montages sometimes of how we saw Ripley sort of orchestrate some of his moves. And at times it would take, 15, 20 minutes to show his cleanup, but it was very methodical. It was really deliberate. And I don't know if Taylor's just like taking cues from some of that when it comes to how he wanted this story to look, but it just felt like a great reminder that whoever is responsible for this directly, we know the organization in some ways that's doing it, but the people on the ground, they were very professional in their craft. They thought a lot of this through when it comes to procedure, how to not get caught. Sure, there are a number of things that in this profession you cannot control, including the perception of the family to how this particular man died, which still does not make sense to any of them, but that's not something you can really wrangle. What you can just do is make the actual scene as impenetrable as you possibly can.
Okay, so the organization, professional. They did what they did and they made it look as good as they could. As Casey said, you weren't supposed to look past everything that they did because they did it very well.
Yeah.
You know who's not professional? This medical coroner. We're going to get into this now.
All right.
So for those of you who don't know, I'm a former funeral director. So when she said, oh, listen, we didn't want to be invasive with the body because you guys might want to have a viewing and a visitation with the body, I was just like, bruh, okay, either she is in on it.
Yeah.
Or whoever's on the writing staff did not bother to talk to anyone that's ever at a funeral or anybody at a funeral home. Yeah. They didn't do any sort of research. I have embalmed over 300 bodies. I would say maybe 90 of them have been autopsies. The idea that a medical coroner is not going to do an autopsy or do anything invasive because the family might want to have some sort of a visitation is ridiculous. First off, a coroner's never going to put the family's wishes over trying to make sure that they have the right diagnosis of what actually happened to this person. Yeah. Typically, families have to fight to be able to not have an autopsy happen. So here's a little bit of sort of inside baseball when it comes to embalming and autopsies. You're able to still have a viewing with this. We will receive the body and we will be able to still do an embalming and put everybody back together again, and you won't know the difference unless somebody has died in like a giant bread mixer and you're just unable to put somebody back together again, Frankenstein style. Yeah. You can put together back an autopsy. What made me even more frustrated with it is she said invasive. So to me, I'm like, okay, autopsy. Tox report, autopsy, no problem. You want to make sure everything is above board, that this is actually John Dutton did this to himself. They take Casey into the room. No autopsies performed. They just rolled him onto his stomach. And she was just like, oh, there's a bruise on his neck and a bruise on his head. Let's roll him over. Oh, there's bruises on the backs of his legs and on his back. I'm like, this is not invasive at all. You just rolled this man over and looked at these bruises. You are so bad at your job. I can't even understand how you have this job. There was nothing invasive about that at all. You just rolled this man over, please.
Okay, I will admit that while watching it, before you explained as much of this to me, because I'm not a former funeral director, because I have no experience in this field at all, it wasn't as front of mind for me. But then as you started to explain it.
And that's good because that's part of our job, right? Like when you get an autopsy, they're open, part of their skull is missing. If we have put somebody back together again after that, and people who aren't part of the industry haven't been able to see that, then we have done our job correctly.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. We're not supposed to, us commoners, we're not supposed to really understand the bells and whistles of this.
But that coroner should.
Yeah, that's the thing that's interesting about all of this, sort of looking at it after the fact, because the biggest problem I've always had, and we've talked about this in past videos, is just that John, in addition to obviously being the father of somebody as strong-willed as Beth, he's also the governor. And this is a really high-profile position where there's two different things that we have to remember here. Number one, a lot of people know John Dutton, so a lot of people are probably going to think, okay, this is a little bit fishy, the way in which he died. So that part of it is very, very weird. And so that's always kind of made me think, well, either what's going on here after the fact is a byproduct of complacency, people being lazy in their job, or it is full on corruption where a lot of people have been paid off X, Y, or Z. And I kind of lean more towards the latter, just because the idea that these people all stink at their jobs, when you're dealing with the governor, if there's anyone you want to do a tox screen report for, if there's anybody you want to take a little bit of a larger look at, this is the part of this that me, as a non-former funeral director or coroner expert, had a problem with, because I was just sitting back and being like, it's one thing to miss something on, an investigation into a normal person, but a high-profile figure, this is the sort of thing where if you screw something up, you ain't ever working in this field ever again. You got to get your resume together here, buddy.
Yeah, and even just a tox report would be something that they would do because they, were there investigating the bathroom and everything that was in there. We saw them plant the drugs. So I feel like the detectives would have seen that and been like, okay, tox report. We got to see what he had taken before this happened, if he took anything before this happened. And not knowing anything about embalming or coroners or anything, that alone is like a huge question mark. So the detectives don't know what they're doing. And then you get into the medical coroner who can't even identify 4 bruises on the head, the neck, the knees, the back, in just an overall look. That's like, oh, we only looked at this bullet hole and nothing else. It's just like, stop it. This is the governor.
As questionable as a lot of this procedure was, I will say this. My guy, Casey, I have made it clear, Casey's my favorite. This is quite possibly one of my favorite episodes that Luke Grimes has ever done on this show. He just had so much to do. He got to be sort of the classic hero. And, it's kind of a Western trope. We have the good guy hero who is coming in to save the day. And, Casey is a good guy. And Casey wants to do right by his father. And it's also a smart decision to have Casey run point here, because you can't have Beth in these particular scenes. Like, Beth is brilliant as a strategist. Beth is great at seeing the big picture of thinking things that other people are not going to think, but you can't put her in a situation where she can be volatile or hot-headed or all of these things that we know Beth to be. Casey will talk to people in a way that makes them feel respected, even if they're not good at their job, which I think we're both in agreement that these coroner people are not good at their job. He will not talk down to them and able to get some sort of answers. Like, if it's not for Casey, we don't get to the point in this episode where there's this press conference and all of a sudden the cause of death for John Dutton is radically changed and the entire Yellowstone world just goes like...
I loved Casey in this episode. Him holding up the phone when she's like, oh no, I can't do anything without the detective say so. Boop, 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 boop. Hey, so detective, can we reopen this? Yeah, sure, Casey, whatever you want. It was just so well done, to the fact that they even did it again later on. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, whatever you want, Casey, no problem. It was just like, it's so well done. I just absolutely loved Casey in this episode. I love him as the hero.
Yeah.
He's not my favorite character. I've said that before. I really enjoy watching Jamie because he is so Weasley and cowardly and dastardly, and that's very weird and exciting. And I never know what he's going to do. He's not predictable in a lot of ways, but actually having like this really good guy hero on the show balances out a lot of the dastardly stuff that is going on.
Yeah, and he's able to make sort of big, aggressive, in the moment decisions like with the phone, but he's able to do it without making everybody else feel terrible around him. And I think it's a really good foundation for him if he possibly is going to lead the ranch at some point, where I feel like there's one of two things that are going to happen to Casey at the end of this show. Either he's going to run the ranch or he's going to get killed. And I'm very worried about the latter, just because he is such a likable guy. And I don't think we're going to get out of this show with everybody else still very much around.
I just really hope that he is not going to end up dead, because if I am left with just Tate saying get a room every single episode, I feel so bad for this actor. There is no reason that they can't give him something quality to do and say, especially since they had no real choice. The actor grew up during the time that they were waiting to refilm the show, but now this kid is a teenager.
Yeah.
They're able to give this kid quality stuff to say, instead of, he has legitimately said, get a room every single episode, 3 episodes in a row now. He shouldn't be saying this anymore. Move it along.
Yeah, just have him off somewhere else while these scenes are happening if you don't have anything for him to do. Like, I wonder, and, I don't know if this is a tinfoil hat theory, because at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't matter. But I do wonder if Yellowstone had been 8 or 10 episodes in the second part of the season, maybe you do tell a story where Tate's getting older, Tate's like going around and, getting out on the town and making friends and being around dangerous people and kind of doing this sort of teenager stuff. But because there's not a lot of time, they just can't really squeeze that in.
They set up a perfect storyline for Tate in the last episode that I was really surprised that we got another, get a room and let's say something nasty to my mom. And they had set up so perfectly this idea of, could I be the next John Dutton? Could I take on my grandfather's legacy? Am I too afraid to? Because it seems like people who do walk in his shoes get killed. That was a really great storyline. I'm like, oh man, I really hope they pick that up with Tate in this next episode. And instead he's making comments about his mom being emotional and get a room. And I understand he's a teenager, but they had set him up for great success of a really good storyline.
Well, I'm hoping they're parking that to maybe bring it back at some other point. I'm hoping that they parked everything with Beth and Rip talking about what if we weren't at the ranch. But we're 18 minutes into this now, and we still have not even talked about my 2 favorite moments of this entire episode.
I'm guessing it's when Casey ran in and punched Jamie.
That was delightful.
That was delightful. I think we all were like, okay, we've seen Beth punch Jamie every single season, but this was something.
It was delicious because it's very unpredictable coming from Casey, who is the good guy, but it's also, and this is to speak to, I don't want to call him your guy, Jamie, but this
he's my guy. I'll call him
all
my
right.
guy.
But your guy, Jamie's defense after the fact, he is so slimy, and him just trying to slither out of this, where he's just like, Casey, look at me. Would I ever do something like that to your dad? This is my family. It's just like, this is the most pathetic thing I have ever seen. I wanted to see Jamie get fully on his knees. I wanted the fake tears like that. He was already hamming it up to such a degree. I mean, we're near the holiday season. Go full Christmas ham in this scene, Jamie.
This is the thing that I really liked about Jamie and how he handled this, because when he handled it with Beth, he couldn't look her in the eye and he couldn't even make up a lie. When he's with Casey, he can look him right in the eye and
Yeah.
be like, I would never do this to you. I love you. You're my brother. And I think everything he's saying is actually true to Casey. I think he does love
Yeah.
Casey. Who doesn't love Casey? I think he loves Casey, and he would never want to do anything that would hurt Casey. I think all that's true.
Yeah.
But of course, you know, he didn't know that he actually was behind it in the first place. Jamie didn't actually know that Sarah went and did this. He thought they were just like, you know, chatting about these dark things, but that it was never going to actually happen. The thing about it is, this is my tinfoil hat theory. I don't think that Jamie couldn't look Beth in the eye because he was behind killing John. I think he doesn't look Beth in the eye because of what he did to Beth all the way back when they were teenagers and what he did to her. I think that he never really looks Beth in the eye. Beth is very aggressive towards him, is always punching him and yelling at him and hates him and is really mean to him for all the reasons that we know. But if you look back at it, Jamie never looks Beth in the eye, and he never really defends himself in the first place on anything when it comes to Beth, because I think he feels tremendous guilt about what he did. He can't take it back. He has to carry that guilt for the rest of his life. He is cowardly, and he is very scared of Beth. So he will never really look at her in the eye. I don't think it actually has to do with the fact that he said something that got his dad killed. I think that's what it is. So when he is able to look Casey in the eye and say, I didn't do this, I think he truly believes that he didn't do this, because technically he didn't do this. He said it in a private conversation with his woman, where everybody's said things that are dark with their partners or friends or whatever, but nobody's actually going out and doing anything. And I think he never expected that she was going to take that conversation and go and do that.
First of all, you are 1,000% correct when it comes to Beth and Jamie. Like, that is the reason why he can't look her in the eye. It just, that trauma that the two of them have from their past, it informs everything with those characters in that relationship. It's one of the reasons why I think Jamie just lives in this constant headspace of shame, where he can't forgive himself, but because he thinks so little of himself because of everything that happened, that's why he gets himself down further and further into these spirals where he does terrible things. And we have seen Jamie do a lot of terrible things on this show over the years. But I mean, this is also why he is such a well-written and really interesting character, because there's not very many villains that kind of constantly live in this cowardly place where, you know, he's complicit in some ways to what happened with John because he knew that Sarah was a bad person, and yet at the same time he didn't really authorize this, or he didn't think he was authorizing it, but he still has to own it. He recognizes that he can profit from it, and all of this is kind of just roped together where he is in a place where he has to live with what happened, because if he comes out and says everything, that's the end of his career. That's the end of him being on the outside. Obviously, Sarah would throw him under the bus in an instance. I mean, we'll talk about what happened to her a little bit later, but it's just a situation where he is completely in a corner and there's nothing he can do. He does love Casey. He does care about Casey. I fully believe in all that, but I think he also knows that he has fully lost Casey. So just like he's trapped in this situation when it comes to John's death, he's trapped in this situation when it comes to his brother, to his family, and whatever could have been there.
What is your second favorite scene with Casey?
Okay, it's not as fun. I will admit that. It's nothing is going to be as fun as what we had with Casey punching Jamie, but I just thought everything with Casey and Beth and Rainwater in this episode was really deep and really profound, and it really kind of it's a great expression of one of the central themes of this show, which is, what does the land really mean to different people? And now I will start this by saying I am not an expert on land ownership, eminent domain, taxes, any of that, so I'm not going to try to get into the nitty-gritty of a lot of it. But basically, the situation that we are in right now is that financially, it's untenable for Beth, for Casey, for anybody at this ranch to be able to keep it going in its current form. And they know that. And they know that there is a legitimately good chance that the government is going to be able to wrestle it away from them, especially if they're just going with this eminent domain route, because then they're just going to come in and try to snatch it all to the best of their degree here. But then there's Rainwater. And I think what he says in these scenes is, I mean, we haven't seen a lot of Rainwater this season, but he is fantastic in these scenes, talking about the meaning of the land, how it can be used to still give it some element of meaning, where maybe there is a compromise in the middle here, where this doesn't become, you know, Las Vegas and Montana and everything is completely scrapped, but there's still a way to preserve something that was there far before the Duttons, that was there for thousands and thousands of years. And I think it's a opportunity and an offer that both Beth and Casey have to seriously consider, where it might be working with somebody like Rainwater, who was an adversary of John's. It's something that they have to really wrestle with now, because I don't think Rainwater, he's not pure evil, and he respected John even though they were at odds. I love watching those characters together.
Okay, let's talk about what's happened with Sarah. So now that Jamie has been removed as, you know, Attorney General right now, is basically like, listen, you can't continue on right now because of what's going on with your dad. And now there's an open investigation into what happened to him. This is now a murder case. You can't be doing this. Jamie's world is crumbling.
Yeah.
Sarah's world also crumbling when she sees the news, and she's like, oh my God, okay. Yeah. They messed it up. Now it's turned from what they sold me on and what I paid for, which was just gonna be something nice and clean. And now it's super messy, and it can all come back to me. I can't get a hold of the organization that did this for me anymore. Now her and Jamie are fighting. They're punching each other. It was so crazy, like what was going on. So finally we see Jamie hits her. She leaves predictably. He calls her. I mean, I don't think anybody was surprised by that. Jamie was alone at that point. You know, he's hit the last person that he has any sort of relationship with. His whole life is completely down the drain, including the person who knows that he's somewhat involved with what happened to John. So he calls her to, you know, smooth it over. This car pulls up and takes her out. Who is behind that hit?
Okay, so here's where I've landed on all of this. First of all, that scene was freaking awesome. I knew that Sarah was probably going to die at some point.
Bye-bye, Sarah.
Yeah, like nobody likes her. She's a pure villain. I think we all, and even when you see the car pull up and you see these, you know, tourists, you kind of know at that point, oh no, something's going to happen here. Right. But this is the thing that I think Taylor's really good at, is sort of executing these like crazy action sequences. And this one's really brief. I thought she was maybe going to get captured, something. I didn't know she was going to be killed like right on the spot. It nearly gave me a heart attack. It was so well done. But I'm sitting back now and being like, okay, how did we get here? And to me, I don't want to say it's fully clear, but it's pretty clear to me that this is the same group that she hired in the first place. Because I think what's going on here is, when she hired these people, it was, okay, we've got an operation here that's going to be nice and clean. But remember, when she went to the secret evil lair of this group earlier on in the season, she basically had to sign her name in blood, do X, Y, and Z, the amount of security precautions they took before she could even have a meeting. I think once they've realized that this is an open investigation, then it's this could come back to us. We need to get rid of the one person who we actually talked to. Dead men or dead women tell no tales, and if she's gone, there's no way we can really be connected to any of this. So they're just wiping their hands clean, and they're just going to drive right off.
100% it's the organization cleaning up. There is nobody else that it is. It just makes the most sense that they did what they thought was a nice, clean job, and then this is all starting to get messy. People are starting to look into it as a murder.
Yeah.
And they're just like, okay, well, who's connected to it? Sarah. Sarah's got to go. Okay, we've cleaned that up. There's no connection to us, to Sarah, to what happened anymore. So that's good. They don't know about Jamie and that part of the connection yet.
Yeah.
But they may be able to figure it out. I mean, they were pretty professional. It's just, I think they just underestimated the family. And the thing that Sarah told them in that meeting, oh, you guys are going to make it look like he did it to himself? This is a mistake. No one's going to believe this. No. It's the cleanest way to do it. You got, okay, if that's it, then that's it. They didn't listen to that little bit of advice that would have saved everybody all this trouble.
And with Sarah in particular, and Sarah, you're dead, so I don't feel bad saying this about you now. Also, you were a terrible person.
Terrible.
Nobody's going to care that you're dead.
No.
And I mean that in the broader sense of the show, that this organization, sure, they can take out Sarah, but Sarah operated from the shadows. She's not a public figure. There's not going to be some big, crazy, frenzied investigation into where she is or what she's doing. Market equities at this point, we saw Carolyn Warner basically just brought her out there to deal with this. She can just find somebody else to go out there and deal with this. She can show up herself. Like, there are a million other ways that they can handle things post Sarah. The only person who's apparently going to be upset about this is Jamie, and Jamie just didn't have anybody else.
Oh, Jamie is right up the creek now. I mean, he doesn't have anybody else. He knows that he's basically the only person really left that knows what she did, that was somewhat involved with it, because he's the person who was talking to her about it and what she did. And now there's going to be some sort of investigation into this. I mean, they pulled up on her. This is like a straight murder. The coroner's not going to be able to be like, hey, if you wanted a nice visitation, we just won't do an autopsy. None of that's happening. This is like a straight up hit. They're going to have to look into it, whether she's a public figure or not. And it is all going to tie back to Jamie. Jamie is like, oh my God, I'm the last person that called her. I'm on the phone with her while she's getting killed. Like, nothing good is happening here. He is completely tied to Sarah. He was romantically involved with her. He was working with her. He's on the phone with her while she's being killed. He is in so much trouble.
Okay, as we look towards episode 12 now, we are just swimming in a sea of mess, and this is what makes the end of this show, or at least the end of this current chapter, we'll see what happens with season 6, but so exciting is that we have Jamie now, who is drowning in this mess.
Oh my God.
And then we also have on the other side of all of it, how do you take out an organization like this? Because even if you are Casey, Beth, you throw Rip in here, like, these people are not in the night agent. They're not capable of like forming some sort of like group of secret agents to go and take out this. Like, they have no capability in this world. They don't know anybody to hire to take care of them. Like, this seems like it's a problem that's just so much bigger than any of them can handle. And I don't know if this is the classic underdog story, but it's kind of looking that way.
This is where our guy Casey, yes, he's my guy too.
Welcome.
Yeah, this is where our guy Casey is going to come in and save the day. He's going to be the hero of the story, because we already saw him make a call to some of his old buddies to be like, do you know anybody that's kind of doing this kind of work? Can you make some calls for me? No problem, Casey. I'll make some calls for you and we'll figure it out together. So I think that guy's going to come back with some information.
Just overall, really great episode of Yellowstone. Yes, some problems in the coroner sphere, but I just think that in terms of giving us a lot of action, a lot of drama, really fast-paced, exciting. I know this was a pretty long episode. It did not feel like it to me watching it.
I mean, the beginning felt a little bit slow, where I was kind of like, okay, they're, getting out of bed. We got Tate making his comments. And it was like, oh my God, there's like 10 minutes have already passed. And let's get moving with this show, guys. And then they did.
All right, well, that's what we got now. But hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other coverage of the Dutton Ranch and beyond here, but also support us further by joining our Patreon. Check out that link in the description below for exclusive videos all about Dune Prophecy. Really great show. Thank you to our patrons, and we'll see you here next time.